Hey there, welcome. In the last video I talked about anger, but I want to talk about how to not be angry in this video. So there's many different ways to face our anger, and there's many of these techniques will be, echoed in kind of anger management psychology and behavioral therapies relating to that. But some of the most effective ways I find are just having a kind of understanding that other people are different. They grew up in different environments with different parents. They have tackled different struggles and different viewpoints. Their whole internal consciousness has been developed from that different reality, different words, different opinions, and think about how that, in the past, people that were most likely good, well-intentioned people would contribute to awful things like slavery and sexist abuse and religious ostracization and horrible things, but they're just people afraid and indoctrinated by their times. Well, this is happening now, obviously, whether it's from our parents and school and community, but also from just whatever internet crap we're intaking, which we know there's a lot. And we've probably consumed some ourselves, if we're honest. And that's the second way, is not just having this empathetic, compassionate understanding of difference, is also understanding that, well, let's look at our imperfections too. When we in the last video I talked about how we just yell and we complain and we blame the world, and we don't really reflect on our own beingness and our own imperfections, inconsistencies. Well, this creates a hypocritical energy. It creates this tension where how can we expect the people we yell at to change if we don't even want to look at ourselves and change? The amount of activist type people I've seen in the world that are so angry at the injustices that also don't change any of their purchases and consumerist behaviors, and just live this unhealthy life filled with Monsanto products and animal products where animals were killed and tortured and enslaved, and purchasing things that are just absolutely awful for the ecosystems around the world without a care. It's kind of this weird feeling. It's okay, well, how do you expect the people you yell at to change, that you're angry with, to change, if you don't want to change? And then we can start to develop some wisdom. Oh, well, yeah, I guess change is hard. Change isn't necessarily easy, because we ourselves struggle with it and we know it. And there's this feeling of powerlessness and patience that we need to embrace. I think people feel powerful when they get angry at others, and they feel justified. They feel this haughty sense of authority and superiority, even if it's just implicit and not intentional. And they like that, this feeling of I'm the bearer of justice, and it can help someone feel good about themselves. Yet when we actually reflect and see I still contribute to the dairy industry, and I buy all these corporate products owned by PepsiCo and Monsanto, and I know that these things are bad, but I still do all this stuff. And then I'm just a defeatist. I'm I can't do anything anyways, and then I'm nihilistic. Well, how can I justify that? How can I justify being defeatist and nihilistic and it doesn't matter with I want other people to care and change? Doesn't really make sense, right? It's just you want the cake and eat it too type of deal. I want to be unaffected and not change and not grow and not do better choices and feel better, but I want other people to do all that. it's a little immature, and I think it happens a lot in those type of spheres of people trying to get people to change, and this anger just spreads like wildfire. And so we need to embrace the powerlessness, the vulnerability that comes with, okay, fuck, I'm not perfect, I have things to change, and man, it might be hard, and I have to embrace the difficulty to be coherent and consistent and do right onto the world and to myself. And then it's not an excuse to be angry at others. It is a tool to understand that it can be difficult for others to see what you see. It can be difficult for others to change as well, just like it's hard for us to change. Because if we are the type of person that understands the struggle and the pain involved in seeing our conditioning and then making effortful, patterns to alter that, we have the wisdom to see, well, that is going to be the case for almost everybody. And if we understand that that's the case for almost everybody, we're not going to be angry at them. We are going to be compassionate towards them. And that's where we can really find effective harmony to transform. And that requires patience, because we know it doesn't happen overnight. The amount of times I've tried to make a morning exercise routine, I ended up having to accept I just exercise better at a different time of day. That's okay. I do an exercise every day, but it is almost never that I exercise right as soon as I get up. Some people are great at this. They just put on their running shoes and running gear and they go outside and go for a run for 30 minutes to an hour. Then they have their morning coffee and breakfast and stuff. For some reason, that's insanely difficult for me. So just understanding that little things can be really difficult for people is a path to empathy and compassion and patience. It took me a while to just accept in myself that, okay, I don't really need to exercise right in the morning. I'm still getting tons of health benefits by just making a sustained exercising habit. And that took a long time to really make that ingrained in my life. I didn't go from, eating pizza and tacos and candy and not exercising to I now have a sustained 1 hour per day vigorous exercise routine that I never miss. Like, it wasn't that wasn't how it happened. It was a very slow, gradual, wave-like process that changed and transformed over time to settle into something that's very healthy and helpful and something I can digest. And that is going to be the case for many things for every person. And I'm willing to say every person, pretty much every single person is going to have certain things that are really hard to change instantly. And it might take a while, and it might not ever be fully effective or fully perfect. So we need to be patient upon others in the world. Things move slow. Some things move fast, but a lot of things don't. So why be angry at others? They were thrown into a world with TikTok and Facebook and YouTube and people making millions of dollars spreading random opinions that are awful, opinions that are just harmful to other life, whether it's animals or foreigners or people of different sexual orientations and people of different mindsets. It's just people out there that make ad revenue and merchandise revenue and have all this attention on them, even if they're just totally, embracing harm upon the world in whatever way that is. And when you think how people have been thrown into a world where that's what's on their TV, that's on their phone, that's on their screen, and it's been something they can consume almost every day, every week, well, the mind is gonna, follow along those lines. It's gonna change. Just like how at some point people in the Abrahamic religions thought homosexuality was bad somehow, that it was evil. It's where did that come from, right? That's, to me, it's totally random, doesn't make any sense. It's kind of awful and insane that people that love each other is bad because why? You know, it's like, but that perpetuated for centuries, millennia even. And it still happens today, even though it's much more accepted. It's still like a present problem at times for people, especially, if people got into certain religious mindsets. And sometimes those religious mindsets can spread really fast now due to internet, due to screen time. And so we have to understand that people are also powerless in the face of conditioning sometimes. They don't know how to resist it, and they just go along with it. And so it took them a while to condition that into their being, probably years, and it's going to take a while to cleanse it and to get it out. And that's the same for all of our stuff. We've been conditioned, most likely. We have bad habits. It's going to take time to cleanse those and become a consistent moral being that tries to not harm other beings, which is, for the activist realm, that's all our anger. And to be honest, even for the bigots, like for the people that just hate other races and sexual orientations for some stupid reason, they think it's the purity. Oftentimes they think it's like it is evil. They think it's bad. They have this toxic moral standpoint that there's something wrong with these beings or this way of being, and they want to make the world a better place in their own fucked up way. And so that's usually where our anger is. We think that there's a righteousness involved. You know, it's like even if it's just I have the right to my desires and my comfort and my convenience and my luxury, so I'm pissed off at people or things that get in the way of that. There is this implicit moral evaluation that the things I value are right, they're worthy. And whether that's more or less true, it doesn't take away from the fact that the anger itself isn't the right response, and it doesn't help. It is very, very rare that anger helps. Even in a situation like, there's only some situations where there's a moral atrocity happening right in front of us and we need anger to act. But usually the anger is just the kindling. And to sustain effective action, we actually need to let the anger go and to focus and be mindful. Whether it's stopping sexual abuse right in front of us, having the anger to move, to stop it is important, but to effectively make sure no one's harmed and that you can keep the perpetrator at bay, you will most likely need a high level of mindfulness and consciousness that anger doesn't beget usually. Same with a moral atrocity of like genocide, like in the Middle East. Anger is an appropriate first response of how despicable these actions are, but to sustain effective communal cooperative efforts, anger needs to be set aside, and we need to be rational, mindful, and create that harmony in love that can keep doing action. The anger is usually too destructive and too impulsive to be something that's a sustainable force. So I recommend, if we have anger, we look at ourselves, see our own powerlessness, be patient with ourselves, and then to apply that compassionately to others, to realize, okay, other people have struggles, conditionings that they were powerless towards at a young age, and we should be patient to help them change. And we should find ways to communicate that are harmonious, not hostile, because anger can almost always be hostile, at least in the eyes of others, even if we don't intend it to be. So, thank you for watching. Om Sai Ram.